What is going on, everybody? At Pick and Fights Tom here with OTH MMA. We are back for another podcast episode. This time, following and recapping what happened at UFC 275 to Teixeira versus Prochazka. With me today, we got Brent and Dolan. We got Cooper Burke. Welcome, the guys, to the podcast. How you doing today, Brent? How you doing today, and how was last night for you?
Doing great, thanks. Last night was awesome. Had a really good time watching the main card. Um, I don't know. It was kind of weird for myself. I was kind of feeling myself in a funk, so to speak, almost like an MMA burnout, if you will. There wasn't much interesting to me the past couple of days, but this card I was interested in, and it kind of rejuvenated. Gave me a little bit more energy to pump into the MMA and kept me excited. So I thought it was a great night of fights. Finishes all over the place. Bonuses were being handed out all over the place. How did you see the night going down there, Cooper?
Yeah, man, my night was a little different. I've been laid up at the house all week, tested positive, so that's really the only reason I'm back here. Um, but I actually, didn't have anything to do, so I sat down and watched the fights start to finish. And it was a good night, man. I thought, overall, all the fights that were made were pretty great. Even the ones that went to decision, I thought were all fairly technical. There weren't any fights that were snooze fest. Obviously the card lost a couple of good fights that I was looking forward to, Kape and Bontarine. But again, in between like the main card and the last couple of prelim fights, there were some really great ones in there, and that was great to see. Just because the UFC hasn't, I mean, their last couple of cards haven't been super exciting.
Yeah, I hear you. I particularly like this card, and I didn't think I was gonna. Like going into the week, I was not as excited for it, especially losing, like you said, Cape from the card at the last second. But also, this was the card that Robert Whitaker was supposed to be taking on Marvin Vittori on, right? So, and I like talked about it a little bit like on Twitter, where I was just like, it was kind of annoying to see Robert Whitaker at a card as as a viewer than as when he was supposed to be fighting. And like I understand it was weird circumstances, and he got hurt. It wasn't as bad as he thought it was going to be. It would get rescheduled. Like I understand that, but like I don't know. It just was a little weird for me. It was a little jarring. Like come on, like we were supposed to have this fight, and then like now you're here. Well, I don't know. It just felt weird for me. I don't know if anybody else felt that, but um, you know, Cooper, I know you wanted to talk about what was his name? I don't think I'm going to pronounce it correct. Machete.
Mahashate, yeah,
Yeah,
Mahashate, yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
He went up against Steve Garcia. I really hadn't heard of this guy. They mentioned on the broadcast he's the only Chinese lightweight in the division, which was kind of new to me because I do remember Rong Zhu. I guess he got cut after missing weight against Dakota Bush. But he looked great. I think a lot of his fight was a little bit more of what did Steve Garcia do wrong and what did he do right. But I do think he was great for his debut. He stayed calm. He was on his back foot a lot because of that pressure from Steve Garcia, but he was smart with his shots, and that's eventually what put Steve Garcia away. Like, it wasn't like he was swinging for the fences and caught Steve Garcia on some wild shot. It was a well-timed back foot right hook, little check hook that put Steve Garcia on the floor. And that's not a lot of something that you see from guys that are in their first fight. A lot of people that I know that have made their debut in whatever organization, they're always trying to get the finish, swinging for the fences, but he seemed calm and collected, and just kind of present. Whereas a lot of guys I've seen have got jitters, but that really bodes well for him. If he's got that mental game going, I don't know what else he has talent-wise. But if you have that mental game, you can easily take steps towards developing that talent. So I don't know what his future holds, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him make a name for himself.
Yeah, a fight that stuck out for me outside of the main three fights was Jake Matthews against Andre Fialo. And I thought, Jake Matthews had he's been out for a little while. You have Andre Fialo, who's been probably the most active guy in the UFC in 2022. I think this was his like fourth or fifth fight in 2022 alone. I thought the activity and the fact that Jake Matthews was like good in all around, but Andre Fialo was like more of a specialist. I thought that Andre Fialo was going to go out there and get it done, and that was pretty much the opposite of what happened. Jake Matthews went out there, put the pressure on him. He said even after the fight that he's like, hey, you've only seen like 50% of what I can be in this game and what I can fight as, and expect to see 100% moving forward. And to start that off by coming out there, being as aggressive as he was, landing a lot of really, really good shots on a tough guy in Andre Fialo, eventually putting him away in the second round, I think says a lot about potentially this new and improved Jake Matthews that we're seeing. So, Brent, what was, I guess other than the main three fights, a fight that like stuck out to you last night?
I personally like the Jake Matthews performance. That's one that sticks out a lot too. The Jack Della Maddalena, that one was wicked as well. Two fantastic ones to open up the card. Out of the two, obviously the Jake Matthews one sticks out a little bit more. I found myself not comparing him to, but some of his movements and the way he strikes. I saw a little bit of Conor McGregor in him, the old school Conor McGregor, and I don't know. I really like what I'm seeing. I'm excited for Matthews and what's to come in the welterweight division for him.
Yeah, Brent. Just to jump in a little bit there, I saw a little bit of Conor too. But I did like what I was seeing. He seemed to be a little bit looser than in his fight with Sean Brady. Although it's kind of hard to be free flowing when you've got a guy with the best top game in the history of the sport against you, other than him and Khabib. But again, Jake Matthews, he looked different. He looked to be kind of not necessarily cautious, but he was calculated in his strikes. And when he missed, he would throw something to complement it. Obviously, that's combinations, but he would throw something that came off of the miss. So if Fialo would react to a shot that missed, he would throw, a right hand instead of that he anticipated where Fialo was going and threw that punch. And that's how he caught him with a couple of hooks and then that uppercut to end the fight. He's been in the UFC for a long time. He signed when he was 19. So he's only 27, but he's already got 11 wins under his belt. I'm really excited to see where he goes. I don't know if I could ever see him as a champion, but I think my ceiling for him is going to be top 10 fighter, maybe top 5 if he really picks it up. But I think a lot of people were super high on Fialo, and to see how Jake Matthews handled that, especially for a guy who is known to be a grappler, I was really impressed.
And when you follow up a great performance with a great interview, it just escalates your stardom that much more, and the star power that you can gain following an event. And he went out there and I think he gained a lot of fans this past card. And you can really see if he can come out one or two more times with that same energy and intensity and have similar performances against guys as he climbs the ranks. That's definitely somebody I can see the UFC wanting to get behind and give every opportunity to move forward. Speaking of moving forward, how about we get to the first of the three main fights? Joanna Jędrzejczyk losing to Zhang Weili in, what was it, third round knockout, or was it a second round?
Second round.
So, Brent, I guess I'll throw it over to you first. What were your initial reactions to the fight immediately before the knockout and then right following the knockout?
It was a roller coaster. This fight was, dare I say, the top fight on the card for myself. The one I was most excited for, obviously, with the first matchup between the two. How could you not be pumped for a rematch? I didn't expect this one to go 5 rounds. I just had a feeling. I just had a feeling that there's no way we could see another 5 rounds of this craziness. unfortunately, that came true. My thoughts right before the knockout were basically, wow, this is an amazing scrap. I was, like I say, a roller coaster of emotions. Joanna coming back from such a long layoff, I think that might have hurt her a little bit, but that first round was absolutely insane. Then they come out in the second round, and never in my wildest dreams did I think I was going to see Joanna face down on the canvas uh, from a spinning. I believe she caught her with a spinning back fist, just perfectly placed, caught her in the perfect spot, and just flatlined her. My initial reaction was unbelievable. I really, really couldn't. My brain couldn't even comprehend what I just saw. I couldn't understand it. I didn't know what the hell was even going on. I'm like, is this real? And then, of course, a couple of seconds passed, and I was like, holy shit. Amazing performance by Wei Li. And the only place for her to go now is for another shot at regaining that belt. What did you think about that scrap there, Cooper?
That was a great one. My thoughts were a little different. When I watch a fight, I really want to see the best competition I can. I'm not necessarily squeamish, but like seeing people get hurt is like, obviously it's a part of the sport, but like seeing like Joanna's hematoma, like that didn't really get me excited. I kind of felt bad for her. But as I was watching this fight, I had a little bit of a different takeaway. I was super impressed with Zhang's takedowns and her top pressure, especially because she's been training with Henry Cejudo, who is well regarded as one of the better wrestlers in the history of the sport. So I thought that was a new wrinkle to her, and I was really, really, really excited to see that. She did scramble a lot, and I think that's partially due to the size of these women. They're a little bit smaller, so it's hip escapes and that sort of thing are easier. But she looked like she knew what she was doing on the ground in terms of technique. Now, she didn't handle herself like that. She was kind of frantic all over the place. But even the fact that she shot for takedowns and used that as part of her game shows that she's got something new going on and could be pretty formidable in terms of a challenge against Carla Esparza. Now, the knockout itself, I really didn't see it coming. I've got this really bad habit where I look away from the TV or my phone or whatever, and instantly I hear, the commentators going crazy. So I missed it. But to me, it looked like one of those things like, was well placed, was really close to me to like a back of the neck punch, which when I saw the replay, I was a little scared for Joanna just to where it landed. It wasn't illegal to me, at least, but it had the potential to be a little bit scary. And to see her face first on the canvas like that was a little jarring. It's a little surreal seeing her retire, but I think it's time. Her last two fights were with Zhang Wei Li, and I think to go out like that and to share something to where she'll be forever intertwined with their name, it's kind of like Gustafsson and Jones a little bit, but this is a little different where, when people mention Wei Li, they're always going to mention Joanna and the two fantastic fights they had together. So to me, that made it a little bit different.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Like both of you brought up the point of seeing Joanna face first down on the canvas and it being jarring and being like it reminded me of when we saw Tony Ferguson face down on the canvas, like something that like you wouldn't really expect to see in your wildest dreams. It's like no, that person doesn't get knocked out or not in that way. So definitely, something going to be totally noteworthy. And when you think of UFC 275, you're going to think of Joanna when she retired and Zhang Wei Li and, the great things that, in the future that Zhang Wei Li is going to go and do. But yeah, that fight. And I just remember it constantly being back and forth and it was really difficult to score any of those rounds. Like, not thank God that like it was ended, but like that it didn't go to the judges because that there was going to be issues no matter what, because those, how are you going to manage damage when both of them are knocking each other down? They're taking each other down, getting reversals. I mean, like it was really wild. Speaking of another wild fight, a ton of reversals. Valentina Shevchenko and Talia Santos. There was a lot of people who were just expecting Valentina to just roll through her. There was a couple people who were saying, "Hey, watch out for Talia Santos." Like, I'm not saying she's going to win, but she's going to make this thing close. And make this thing close, she absolutely did on a lot of different scorecards. I think Talia Santos was the winner. I think 2 and 3 she definitely took, and then the other rounds I think are pretty debatable. I think 4 is going to go to Valentina, but every single round has a case for Talia Santos. I don't know if every single round has a case for Valentina Shevchenko. Cooper, what were your initial thoughts and reactions to Valentina Shevchenko versus Talia Santos?
I was running the socials, so I was kind of looking at the impact of that headbutt. That really bothered me. In terms of at least I didn't even see the doctor come and look at it. She looked pretty beat up, right above her eye there, and it certainly impacted her vision and certainly impacted the way she fought in the last 2 rounds. Because she couldn't defend anything coming from the left side of Valentina. I think that altered the fight significantly. I think round 4 would have been more of the same had she not gotten that headbutt. And I think round 5 wouldn't have been as close. That being said, I do score it for Talia Santos. I think 3-2 is where I'd see it. But I will say, I think seeing Valentina as the winner doesn't surprise me in the least, given with how she fought. I thought that second round could have been was pretty close. That 4th round was solid for Valentina, and that 5th round could have gone either way. So I wasn't upset with seeing Valentina win that fight in terms of, the judges made a mistake, but I was certainly upset by the fact that she won that fight after that headbutt, because that headbutt just completely changed the complexion of the fight. Talia Santos was obviously moving slower. She didn't look as willing to engage. And then I saw it again. It was a minor head clash, but it was still a head clash that didn't affect Valentina at all. So I think, I'm going to be pretty upset if I don't see a rematch of this fight, given how little competition Shevchenko has faced and how well Santos did up until that headbutt. Brent, what about you?
You know what, Cooper? I think you hit the nail on the head there, so to speak. I would agree with you for the most part. I had Santos winning that fight. I was surprised, not disappointed necessarily, but definitely surprised when the judges, gave it to Valentina. One thing that really stuck out to me for Santos was her speed, especially in that first round. I think it might have even been the first flurry. She threw I believe it was a 3, possibly even a 4-punch combo that backed Valentina up almost immediately against the cage. And right then, I think Shevchenko probably realized, like, oh fuck, maybe a little bit of underestimation there. I'm not sure. Definitely seemed like she got caught off guard. For the headbutt, clash of heads obviously was unintentional, but it was nasty for Talia. And I do believe that in a way that possibly even could have cost her the fight, not only the round 4 and 5, but even the damage. Like, you look at her, and I have no idea if the judges were even aware that the clash of heads is what caused the damage. I never saw the ref signal anything. Maybe I missed it. I'm not 100% sure, but there's no doubt that clash of heads changed the fight. Santos was, I'm not going to say cruising to victory at that point, because obviously you don't cruise to victory over someone like Valentina, but she was on her way to being the new champion. As for a rematch, I don't see any other option at this point. I mean, I'm looking at the rankings right now. You got Caitlin Chukagian ranked number 1. Then you got Lauren Murphy, Jessica Andrade. Who's gonna challenge Valentina at this point? It's a $1 million question. What did you think about that one there, Tom?
Yeah, I thought a lot of the same things you did, especially regarding the head clash, because that happened at, I think it was like 3 minutes and 30 seconds into the third round is when the head clash occurred. And then you see, at the beginning of the fourth round is really when it's swollen up. And that was pretty much the exact same time that Valentina started winning her rounds in more dominant fashion, right? So, I think we all agree the fourth round definitively goes to Valentina, and then there's a good case for her for the fifth round, which I think on most scorecard judges' scorecards they ended up giving it to her. So those are the two rounds, and that's following the head clash, which stuff's going to happen in a fight like that. It bad luck. You have to go on. That's not something that should be taken away from Valentina per se, but I mean, when it comes to talking about Talia Santos' chance of beating Valentina, I mean, that head class has to go into it because it definitely played a part in the fight. I'm not upset with Valentina getting the win. I think I scored it 1, 2, 3 for Talia, and then 4 and 5 for Valentina. Um, but I don't. I think that fight it's so close, and there's cases that could be made either way because of all of the action that happened. Like, you know, I don't know if anybody has a definitively wrong scorecard, which is it was a very very close fight through and through. So like I don't think some people will say that Talia Santos was robbed. I mean I don't think she was robbed. Like I mean she was robbed in the fact that she had to fight with something that her opponent didn't earn. I guess from that perspective, yeah. But in terms of judging, no, that was a close fight, and you know sometimes it goes your way, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, speaking of, sometimes it goes your way, sometimes it doesn't. Even when it's going your way and it's about to go your way, 29 seconds before it goes your way, sometimes you get caught in a rear naked choke by a real life samurai. Cooper, what are your thoughts on Jiri Prochazka choking out Glover Teixeira at the very end of the fifth round of their championship fight? After, according to the judges up to that point, Glover was about to win the fight on on decision.
Well, I mentioned earlier how I seem to always miss the big finishes. It was, I think I shut my computer at 36 seconds left in the fifth round, and as soon as I shut it, I hear my phone start blowing up from our group chat, and I'm like, "Holy crap, what did I miss?" So I go back and find the finish. That's unfortunate, man. I don't think Glover fought his best fight in terms of fight IQ. I think there were certain moments where I'm like, if he had stuck with this, the fight would have gone his way and he wouldn't have gotten caught. Obviously, there was the chasing the finish at the end that led to his loss. But you can't really fault Glover for doing that because Jiri Prochazka is not really known as being a grappler. In his interview with OTH, he was talking about kicking down trees and all this like samurai, like Bushido stuff. A lot of it on the feet. He was a kickboxer before he got into the UFC. So, I don't think that Glover was expecting that. We weren't expecting it. It just goes to show anything can happen in mixed martial arts. Now, I will say, having almost all four, maybe 3 of the 4 rounds for Glover, that didn't really sit right with me. I thought Jiri won 2 of them, and I thought Glover won 2 of them. But I will say Glover was winning that 5th round handedly until the very end of that fight. I really hope Glover gets another shot at it. I don't want to see that happen to a guy that's so well regarded as not only a nice guy, but one of the better fighters of our generation, who just took a while to get it going and get to the top. To see him lose like that, it's pretty heartbreaking. Brent, what's your 2 cents on this thing?
Yeah, no, I agree with the heartbreaking thing. I mean, obviously, I don't have anything against Jiri. He's an amazing martial artist. As you say, real life samurai. I think I even tweeted out last night when he was making his walk to the cage, or when he made his way to the arena. Like, the guy reminds me of a real life Quentin Tarantino character. Like, he could easily be a character in a Tarantino movie, and you wouldn't even think anything of it. But here he is chopping down trees, and I mean, we're MMA fans, right? We to a certain degree we crave a little bit of craziness with our fighters. we want to be entertained. But I don't think there's anybody out there that wanted to see Glover lose. Certainly not me. Same thing as Shevchenko. I'm not mad that Jiri won. He's going to be a great champion, I believe, down the line here. But Glover, man, he's such a nice guy. I can't say enough things about him. He's been around forever. The late bloomer, as they say. And I, for one, I had no doubt Glover was winning that scrap up until the last 30 seconds there. And that just shows you, like you said, it's the craziness of MMA. I mean, 30 seconds is a lifetime inside a cage. And you can get caught. Anybody can get caught at any time, and it can be over. One thing I did want to touch on is I strongly felt that Teixeira was going to retire. I had a feeling like had he lost this one, he was just going to call it. So maybe I'll pass this over to you, Tom. Were you surprised at all that he said he's going to keep going?
No, I think when you are, the champion, especially becoming the champion at 41 years old, you fight again, and who's a lot of people in their minds is the scariest guy and the most exciting guy in the division. And you know that you took in your mind at least 3 rounds. If you want to include the 5 rounds, you took at least 3 of them. From Jiri Prochazka, the scariest guy in the division. You know that you took all of his power, weren't able to push through, and you know that you have an advantage on the ground that you can exploit, and a little bit more knowledge of the striker he's going to face. I mean, why would you? Be like, all right, yeah, he caught me, and especially for a guy who plays jiu-jitsu as much as Glover does, you're going to get caught. That's just it's what happens, right? Being 42 years old, I think he's going to be like, okay, cool, you got me, but like I'm going to take this not back to the drawing board, but like I'm going to take it, and if I can put up that dominant of a fight that I was winning up until the last second against the guy who's now the champion, I was the champion. Why would I stop now? I can continue fighting. I'm making more money than I've ever made, in my UFC career. Like I'm only extending my legacy, and like why would you? I mean, and you got to imagine these guys who are fighters, they love fighting. So especially with all the adrenaline in the moment. No, I'm not surprised that he was just like, no, I'm gonna keep going. Like, look, maybe if he did poorly, right? If he goes out there and maybe if he gets submitted in the second round, like Jan did, then he's like, oh shit, maybe I lost it. Because you're waiting for the wheels to fall off. And especially when he's operating at such high RPMs at this late stage of his career, you're kind of waiting for it's like they're probably going to all fall off at once. It's not going to be like he's 42 and the champion and he's going to gradually fall. Like I just think that like MMA is such a emotionless sport that it's going to get you when it gets you. And like, nice guy, bad guy, mean guy, whatever, like it's going to get you. So not surprised, but we'll see who he actually picks next to fight. I think that's going to be indicative of what the UFC wants for him. If he fights a top contender in the light heavyweight division, and another exciting guy, that says that like, hey, UFC still really values him as like a top talent. If he, has a lesser opponent, they could be kind of inching him out. But like, all right, like we don't want you as champion. There was already some rumors that the UFC, in all their infinite wisdom, already didn't want potentially Jiri Prochazka, or not Jiri Prochazka, didn't want Glover Teixeira as a champion because he's not somebody who, like, he's a super nice guy, but doesn't make a ton of waves, doesn't bring a ton of eyeballs. Jiri Prochazka punching trees, living like a samurai, like, yeah, that's mystical. That's stuff that sells. That's stuff that people are going to be interested in. Just like, Khamzat Chimaev and bringing the personality. Personality sells, and UFC is as much in personality and the sales of personality business as they are in the fight business. Hey, what do you guys think? I know I kind of word vomited all over you guys.
No, you brought up a good point there with Glover, and maybe it would have been different had he come out and, like you say, got dominated for 5 rounds or couldn't keep up, or got finished right away. Maybe he would have decided to leave his gloves, but I'm glad he didn't. I want to see him fight one more time because he's a feel-good story. Sorry, go ahead, Cooper.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but you touched on some nice there. I'm gonna use a little bit of a golf analogy. I don't know if you guys are big golfers. but I've been playing golf for a better part of 5 years now. And Glover's fight, to condense it into one single event, it's like hitting a great golf shot and getting a really crappy bounce. I can distinctly remember one of the best shots I ever hit in my life. I was probably 150 yards out. I flew it into the cup on the fly for what would have been eagle, but I landed in the bunker next to it. And I wasn't like, oh, I'm done with this. I got up and down and I made par. So, he's going to tell himself, I fought really well. I made a mistake. It happens, but that one mistake is not indicative of how he fought over those 5 rounds. He fought really well for those 5 rounds. So I think that should be encouraging to him, if anything. And again, you said the UFC doesn't really think of him as a cash cow. They don't think of him as a guy that puts butts in seats. But this puts butts in seats right now, because this is kind of his redemption arc, if you will. He's coming back bigger and better. He's not only fighting Jiri, but he's also fighting Father Time. So, I think if they do make this rematch, I think it's going to be huge. Which, there's only a couple of fights that the UFC's ever put on that have been huge. But this really could be one of them, just because of the storyline, because of what happened, and because of what Glover means to the sport, and the promotion itself. I think, he has no reason to retire. I think if he comes back, I do see him having a legitimate shot against Jiri Prochazka. To me, I think he should keep pushing. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the belt back.
Yeah, I think it all depends on how quick and how quick he can make that turnaround, and what his medical suspension is going to be. Because at the end of the day, if he's on a 6-month medical suspension or a 5-month medical suspension or something long, right, and then he's going to take another few months off to get back into it, and now he's not fighting, and then he's turning 43 years old. Like I said, I think the wheel can fall off at any time. Not saying that that's necessarily his next fight or the fight after that, but at 42 years old, like if you're going to wait a year before you're fighting, like that's just a lot of time. And especially when you're older, your body doesn't recoup the same ways it does when you're younger. It doesn't heal the same and doesn't heal as quick. So I think this is all factors. It depends on how hurt he is, how quick he can turn around, how quick he can get back in there. What's medically right, to do. And then I guess the balance that brings on. But if he can fight, one more time against a top contender, maybe in the next 7-8 months, I think that'll be really interesting. Get a win there, then I think you could definitely. I think Jiri is probably going to fight Jan next, because I think Jan was going to get the winner of this fight. So I think Jiri is going to fight Jan, and I think the UFC is going to want to go that direction, because those are 2 strikers who are going to stand and bang, and you don't have to worry about potentially some of the more. Or should I say, you don't have to worry about some of those less exciting periods of the fight where, they're fighting for position on the cage or something like that. It's going to be striking all the time with Jan and Jiri. So I think that's going to be, and then, Glover has history with both of those guys. So depending on how quick he can get back in there, he could get back in there, get a good win, and then fight the winner of those 2 he has backstory with. And I think maybe that's a smart angle for the UFC to pursue. I don't think you're going to get your immediate rematch with Glover and Jiri.
No, I had heard. No, this is all speculation and rumors, but talk was that Dana was looking at the winner of Smith and who's he fighting? Ankalaev, I believe, which is number 5 against number 4. There's rumors that that's a title eliminator fight, but that's all hearsay, and we all know that stuff like that can change at any second. I personally like the Jan versus Jiri matchup, and that one excites me more than say Anthony Smith. I love the guy, but I don't see a path for victory for Smith against someone like Jiri. Jan, on the other hand, he's not quite as crazy, but he's out there as well. That would be a fantastic matchup. Not only in the lead up to the fight, but the scrap itself.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't see Jan winning that fight against Jiri for a couple of reasons. He's a little bit bigger, and and bulkier than Jiri. You know, he's kind of on the big end of that division. Obviously, Jiri did come in at 205, just like the rest of them. But I think Jan is he is a striker, like you said, Tom. But he also has a predilection to turn towards the wrestling to set up ground offense, like we saw against Israel Adesanya. So I don't know. Maybe if Jiri can hang in range and just kind of pick him apart, I think that's his path to victory. As far as Anthony Smith goes, really, I think we'd have to see him against Ankalaev to really see if he's got a chance. So, like you said, the Prochazka versus Blachowicz fight makes the most sense. They're both characters. They're both from Eastern Europe. They've both got a pretty solid fan following. I think it would make a great fight. I don't know, maybe as a co-main event, just for something like a lightweight championship fight or something like that. But again, still a great fight. I'd love to see it, if not the rematch of Glover and Jiri. Tom?
Yeah, I think you guys said it all. Is there anything else that we want to get to before we put a bow on this one?
Yeah, the time zones. You know,
Right.
if you look at Singapore's arena, they're 12 hours ahead of Eastern time. So the prelims actually kicked off at 7 o'clock in the morning, Singapore time, which is pretty early. I probably wouldn't get up at 6 o'clock, 5:30 to go watch fights. But I will say, I think it's smart that it finished at like 1 p.m. their time. You know, I was at UFC 273 in Jacksonville, and the main card didn't really finish till 2 o'clock. I didn't get home till 2:45, 3 to the hotel that was 10 minutes outside of the stadium. And, you know, there's only so much that you can do. So I think that the fact that they had that in the morning local time there was nice. May not have, it was the same for fans. You know, that's why they had it in the morning. It was just so Eastern time could fit in that primetime slot. But I do want to see more of the UFC holding events at different times so their fans don't always get out of the arena at 2 o'clock local time. Because ultimately that's bad for business. You know, there's obviously going to be diehards, but I think, you know, you're seeing a lot of people that don't show up to the prelims, the people that don't show up to the first couple of fights on the main card because they don't want to sit there for 6 hours and get home at 2 a.m. They're more than happy to take a nap during the prelims and come in at, I don't know, 11 o'clock to catch the last 3 fights on the main card. So if you have it a little bit earlier, I don't know about 7 o'clock their time, but maybe middle of the day, main card starts at 9, maybe 8:45, so it finishes closer to midnight rather than 2. I think that could be potentially really big for their business.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and it's something that's kind of been up and down, right? You get some of these fight nights out of nowhere, taking place in Las Vegas, not even overseas or anything, but they're starting mid-afternoon, and you know, the fighters are done. Everybody's done 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. It's a much different feel, I find. And I'm gonna equate this to hockey because that's the other sport that I know very well. Is daytime hockey games were always different than evening hockey games. Same game, same arena, same ice, but there's just a different feel. Maybe hockey's a little bit different. I don't know how many fighters are very superstitious, but hockey players tend to be very superstitious and have their routine. And afternoon games screws up your routine. So I don't know if the fighters maybe face that or if the fighters don't really care what time they're fighting. As for the fans, though, I agree. I went to a UFC event. This is going back years. This was UFC 161, I believe it was. But it's a complete day. When they say event, it's an event. Because I think we got to the arena around, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They had street parties going on and meet the fighters. They had everything that, and then the prelims. And then, like you say, Cooper, we didn't get out of there till probably 1 o'clock local time, get home 2 in the morning. It was a long, long time. Not that I wasn't entertained, because I am a diehard and I am the kind of person that will sit there from start to finish if I buy a ticket to an MMA event. But for the average fan, it's just stretched out. And you're right. I believe that's why we're seeing more and more empty seats during the prelims and even the opening of the main card. And I'm worried that I'm not worried, but I don't like that we're going that way. And I think it can be avoided, because I don't want to be going the way of boxing, where nobody gives a shit about any of the fights on the card except for the one fight, the main event. That's kind of what makes MMA a little bit different, is you can have a stacked card from top to bottom in MMA, whereas boxing, you just don't see that.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think, you know, just a little bit about fighting in those different time zones. I think like definitely they have to um, they're thinking about the fans and the broadcast getting the numbers first, because that's what's bringing in the money. But think about the fighters who are just told what to do when it's like, oh, you're fighting at 8 a.m. As compared to like, hey, you're used to training at a certain time, and like having to change that, and then potentially, as they change, as fights come on and off the card, then moving the card back an hour, up an hour, whatever they have to do. Like as a fighter, that probably makes preparing a lot more challenging and stressful, not necessarily knowing when you have to fight and then having that being potentially changed on you at the drop of a hat. So I don't doubt that there's a better way to do it, but I'm someone who went to UFC. I think it was a fight night, Covington versus Lawler, and I think that started like 2 or 3 o'clock. It was in New Jersey. It was in Newark, New Jersey, at the Prudential Center. And I think it started at like 2 or 3 o'clock, and we were able to take the train in from where I live, like 12:30, 1 o'clock. So not like a super duper early morning. And it was 5 or 6 hours for me as a fight fan. It went by, as quick as any other sporting event. And I actually valued the fact that, hey, if I buy a UFC ticket, I'm not just getting 3 hours of football or 4 hours of baseball. I'm getting 5, 6, 7 hours of fighting, which was awesome. I loved it. I think there weren't even a ton of finishes on that card specifically, but it was just like, I always describe the energy of going to UFC fight as like, when the team is in the offensive zone in hockey, and they're on a 5-on-4 power play, and they need a goal to take the lead, and you're at the end, and there's that like hushed silence of like, this could get crazy at any moment. That's how I feel at a lot of UFC cards and for fights, like for an extended period of time, that hey, there'd be a knockout at any given time. Like I imagine watching Joanna versus Wei Lee yesterday, where like they're going at each other, swinging heavy. There's on the ground, there's reversals. Like you think Glover versus Jiri is like he's Jiri can get the knockout at any time. We've seen his power in multiple different ways, and then Glover just somehow we would walk through, take a ton of shots, dive on a leg, somehow end up, even if he's on the bottom, turn over, get up on the top, start landing elbows. And I mean, Jiri had one of the worst cuts, and there was so much blood in that fight. I mean, it was fantastic. So I can only imagine what it's like being there for that. And I think that totally trumps any other sport. And the feeling that you
Absolutely.
get, it's just so primal watching the fights, man. But I think that was the perfect sweet spot. If you have like the prelim start at 2 or 3 o'clock, and then have it run until it's over at maybe 10 or 11. But then it's really hard when you're trying to carry in the time zones, because I mean, I guess you could back it up 1 hour, but then now you start getting to, it's a little bit too early for California, but it's
a juggling act.
hard,
Really.
yeah.
Yeah, like you said, it's a little early for California. They've noticed that. Like I mentioned before we started that Apple TV is doing like baseball games, Sunday morning baseball, which 11 o'clock start time doesn't really make any sense to me, because I live in the Bible Belt, so everybody I know is at church. They're not going to see the start of that game. But again, for the California people, the game is in Oakland, and the first pitch was at 8:30. So that's a little absurd to me. So to see that as a combat sport, like the guys in Singapore, they started at 7 o'clock. They've been there for probably a week and a half, 2 weeks. So their bodies are probably adjusted to the time zone. So they probably had to get up at, I don't know, 4:35 to get their body warmed up and get ready for the fight that took place at 7. I don't see that as sustainable, but I will say having cards on the East Coast, like in New York or Boston or Atlanta or Jacksonville, pushing those cards back an hour, 2 hours to where they finish at maybe midnight, 12:30 is much different than a late 1:30, 1:45, 2 a.m. finish. Not only for the fans, but for the crew. They've got to stick around. They've got to deprep. They probably pull all-nighters. So I think it's a win-win if you push the East Coast cards back maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a good case right there. I didn't think about, the people who have to break it down. I think, I mean, if they're pulling all-nighters, I wonder, if they're going to see it. But like, yeah, I mean, if that makes that much of a difference, and I think you're right. Like for the East Coast cards, popping it back an hour or two, to where it's not super late for us, but then it's still like, maybe ends at like 8 or 9 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock for the West Coast. I think the biggest thing for the UFC is like, where's all the money coming from? Where's the biggest population of people who are going to be watching this fight? And if the majority of that in the United States, if you divide it down the middle, the majority of that is coming from the West Coast, they're ultimately going to cater to the West Coast. That's numbers that I guess only the UFC knows. But if they start catering things a little bit more towards the East Coast, but you also got to think they do things, even when it's at Madison Square Garden, the Mecca, they're doing things where it runs pretty late at night. UFC cards in November at Madison Square Garden have definitely went, beyond 12:30, 1 o'clock. So I don't know. I think fighting has always kind of had that air of like kind of being the late night thing. So I don't know if they're going to see a big change to that, but I mean, hey, I would definitely welcome it being on the East Coast, being able to finish a fight at 10:30, 11 o'clock and then go out. Like, yeah, that's great to me. But Brent, do you have anything to say as far as finishing this conversation off?
No, they're just. I already said it was a great night of fights. Enjoyed it a lot. I look forward to seeing what's coming next for a lot of the fighters. And once again, congratulations on a stellar career for Joanna. I know she had mentioned she's 34. She wants to start a family. So good on her. And hopefully she can, enjoy the rest of her life and just live it up, because she's already cemented her place in history, and she's forever gonna be a part of the UFC and MMA as overall.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, everybody watching at home, thank you so much if you made it this far. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let us know, what you're looking for out of a OTH podcast, what you want us to talk about, topics, either on this card or this week, next episode, whatever you want. Just let us know down there in the comments. What was your favorite part? Right, put your responses down in the comments as well. Guys, thanks for joining us. Make sure everyone is following OT Heroics MMA on Twitter and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thanks so much, and have a good night.